It's Tommy John for Brandon Williamson. And the Reds playoff drought, it continues. We're going to talk about all of it on today's Locked On Reds.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Reds. My name is Jeff Carr. His name is Steve Offenbaker, and we are lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans. And we have been talking about these Reds in podcast form for 12 years combined. I want to thank you for making Locked On Reds part of your day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. And we aim to make Locked On Reds accessible to everybody. We'll talk about the big thing going on in Reds country. We'll dive into some geeky stats and make them make sense. And we'll overreact to the MLB season every single day. Thank you for being a part of today's podcast because Steer, Elly, Barry Larkin, and Eric Davis, what do they all have in common? We'll tell you coming up later on in the show. We are also going to dissect the awful, horrible, no good, very bad news about Brandon Williamson, what it means for next year, how they replace him, what it means for him personally coming up here in just a few minutes. But we are going to start first with the Reds being eliminated from the playoffs. And that's all coming up on today's podcast that is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB to save $20 off your first purchase. All right, Steve, Reds fall 7-1 to the Atlanta Braves on Wednesday night. Reds won the season series against the Atlanta Braves, though, so Mets fans, you're still welcome. But this loss, officially, mathematically, there's literally no chance for the Reds to make the playoffs. David Bell can finally stop telling us that they're competing for something. My initial reaction with this is just utter disappointment, but quite frankly, it's utter disappointment that I feel as though I've gotten over like a couple of weeks ago.
Well, you know, the fact of the matter is you and I accepted this about a month ago. We accepted this when the Reds didn't have a single starting pitcher active on the roster that was on the roster on opening day. We accepted this when the Reds were picking anybody they could find on a waiver wire and teaching them to play outfield. We accepted that this was going to be our reality. So it makes it hurt a little bit less in the moment. But the fact of the matter is this team in its playoff drought is something that is really, really bothersome to me.
Longest in professional sports.
We're gonna spend a lot of time on this in the offseason, Jeff, but just the fact that it's been so long. And I know there's going to be people, you and I talked about this while we were prepping. They're going to say, but they made the playoffs in 2020, Steve. They've been to the playoffs. Don't come at me with 18 innings of no-hit baseball in Atlanta during a COVID season. That doesn't count.
Ugh.
Does not count.
Ugh.
But look, here's the thing, Jeff. I think that this actually does hurt a little bit worse, because at least for me personally, we talk about this team every day and we try and do it in an optimistic way, but we're realistic about this team and we cover this team like everybody else covers this team. But you and I both entered this season with the expectation of success. You and I entered this season with that feeling as fans because we love this team and the feelings that the people that listen to us every day have for this team, where this was finally going to be the year where we turned on the first round of the playoffs and there was that collection of broadcasters talking about the young, exciting Cincinnati Reds storming into the postseason. And it just never really got started. In fact, it kind of got sabotaged before they ever got out of Goodyear.
Yeah, I think the really annoying part about this year is that you can't talk about it without injuries. You can't talk about it without Matt McLain because Matt McLain was never here. And you can't talk about it without CES because while CES was here for a little bit, it was clear that he wasn't right. And then he got hurt and he was out for the rest of the season. What are those guys going to look like next year? We don't know. We will need to see them to know before we can find out. TJ Friedl was barely here. And I was looking at this the other day. I thought this stat was kind of actually a little bit funny in that TJ Friedl has played half of the amount of games that Jonathan India has played, and he has one less home run. It just shows you how good TJ Friedel could be. And I know that his batting average and his on base are nowhere near where they were last year, nowhere near where we wanted them to be at all. And a lot of that just has to do with the infrequency with which he played. But there are still some counting stats that he was able to accrue that make it look as though he is comparable to some of the guys on the roster that have been here all year. It just goes to show you the amount of at-bats that they missed from key hitters. And I understand, I know that there's been the point that Fangraphs shows the amount of wins above replacement that the Reds lost to injury is kind of middle of the road. It's not like a huge amount, but there's such an intangible that the Reds lost without Matt McClain, without TJ Friedel, and without CES that wins above replacement can't even explain. And that's really where you have to start with where this season was derailed.
Yeah. And, the impact, it's hard to quantify. Some people call this like, the leaders in the locker room, the leaders on the field, the leaders in the dugout, whatever you want to call it, the leaders in the clubhouse. The guys that are missing, it's more about the counting stats. It's about the electricity that they generated and fed off of each other and motivated each other to do things. Has Elly's stats been great? Sure. They're fine. Has Spencer Steer been great at times? Yes. He's a 2020 guy. We're going to talk about that coming up in a little bit. But would he have hit for more if he was being pushed by Matt McClain? Would Elly have stolen 80 bases already if he knew he had Matt McClain hitting behind him in the lineup and he was trying to get over to get in? It just changes. We don't know. Could
Tyler Stevenson hit 40 home runs? People are talking.
Yes, that is absolutely going to happen. It's absolutely no.
People are talking.
You know what I mean? The change in energy, something that you can't go on Baseball Reference and find, is really what the difference was with this team. And it felt to me like, Jeff, this injury that we're going to talk about in the next segment, every time one of these things happen, just the wind comes out of the sails. Every time you thought the Reds were going to get some momentum and stay in this playoff hunt, and they're within 4 games, they're within 3 games, somebody's hurt. All right, we're back in it. They're within 3 games. Oh, somebody's hurt. That it just was rinse and repeat over and over and over again. And it's just frustrating. I think it's frustrating because of the expectation I had going into it.
Oh, 1,000%. I had the same expectation, and I think a lot of Reds fans did. And then, look, we're not saying that that's the only reason. There are a myriad of reasons, and we're going to get into those as we get into the offseason, as we go through the offseason, because we're going to be with you every single day through the end of this season, and as we get into the winter months and all that other stuff, talking Reds baseball every single day with you. So we're definitely...
What's winter?
Winter.
I don't have that here.
Steven. But when it comes to everything that derailed this team, it wasn't just injuries, but that was the biggest thing in my mind. There's definitely a lot of other stuff that we will get into later on. But yeah, the 7-1 loss to the Braves is officially the final nail in the coffin, mathematically eliminated. In fact, on the same day that the Brewers clinched the division because the Cubs lost as well, so the Brewers got to have their champagne baths after their game. Just overall, a rough day. And looking forward to next year, there's so much that the Reds need to do to get to where we thought they should be. But right now, for these final 9 games of the season, there's definitely a directive with the guys who are here. And
let's take a quick side trip because we've got a couple minutes here, Jeff. With so few games remaining, with this team not making the playoffs, what do you look for? We talked about what we wanted to see from guys the rest of the way, but these last 9 games now, there's really not anything to play for other than pride. What are you going to be watching, and who are you going to be watching over the last couple weeks here to prep the narrative for the offseason?
I'm definitely going to be watching Julian Aguilar closely. How does he continue to pitch? And he's pitching today. I'm also going to be watching Noelvi Marte. He is seemingly starting to put together a little bit of a hit streak. And while I don't think that even if he were to continue this hit streak on through the end of the season, I don't think that sets him up to be the opening day third baseman, it's definitely going to make me feel slightly better about him heading into the offseason in a year that he struggled mightily after missing half the season with a PED suspension. So how does he finish out the year? What do we see from Tyler Stevenson? He needs 2 more homers to get to 20, and then you'll have 4 Reds with 20 or more homers on the season. That'll be a nice little thing to kind of point back to. But those are the guys off the top of my head, and continue to see if Alexis Diaz can kind of figure some things out here, as he seems to be getting a bit of a second wind.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing how Rhett Lauder wraps up this year.
Yeah.
What his last couple of starts look like. We're going to get Hunter Green this weekend. I'm interested to see what that looks like. Does he come out throwing 99, 100? Does he come out throwing with it dialed back? That's going to be very interesting, something to really pay attention to. And then you hit the other guy. I want to see Tyler Stevenson get to 20 home runs. I want to see him finish strong. I'd like to see him put together a little hit streak, get to 20 home runs, and really continue to evolve, because I think that him finishing strong goes into what I think needs to happen in the offseason, which we're going to talk a lot about, which is him getting an extension, him getting a contract this offseason.
He looked like he had a home run there. I think it was taken away from him, kind of going oppo taco last night. Guy got it right at the wall. It might have been at the top of the wall. I'm not sure if it would have been a home run, but it was close. It's close. He's still hitting the ball really, really hard.
All right, Jeff. That's kind of the postmortem on the playoff chances. The Reds, they aren't going. But a day that was bad because of that was absolutely horrible because of the news we got about Brandon Williamson. We're going to be talking about Brandon and Tommy John and all of the impacts of that coming up next. Do you like collecting sports cards? I do, and I have found an awesome new way to enjoy this hobby with Arena Club. For most of us that like collecting cards, the idea of spending $2,000 or more on an Elly Cruz autograph rookie card just isn't in the cards for us, pun intended. But I love collecting, but that's some serious money to drop on a card. Thanks to the slab packs from arenaclub.com, now it's possible to score gem mints for a fraction of the retail price. Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and clear hit rates for each one. You just create an account, purchase a pack that includes multiple hits, and grab a collector's item. Open your packs online. Arena Club makes it very transparent what kind of cards you get in what packs, and you can even buy and sell online as well. When you land the special card that you have to display at home, just retrieve it and pay a small shipping fee, and it comes right to you. Right now, you can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/lockedonmlb and use the promo code LockedOnMLB. That's arenaclub.com/lockedonmlb and use the promo code LockedOnMLB for 10% off your first purchase. We're talking Cincinnati Reds baseball here today, and we're talking Cincinnati Reds baseball here every day, every week, every month, all year long. Make sure you subscribe to get at least 30 minutes of Reds coverage each and every day right here with Locked On Reds. All right, Jeff, bad, terrible, horrible news. It just really is bummer. I feel so bad for Brandon Williamson. We heard yesterday that he's getting Tommy John surgery. That's going to have him shut down through at least this time next year, probably beyond. There'd be no sense in spinning him up in September of next year. So we're going to lose Brandon Williamson for a full season next year. And it leads to a lot of questions in your mind and in my mind about how his rehab was handled, how bringing him up may have potentially impacted him and maybe even contributed to this. And where the Reds go from here, having to absorb yet another loss of a starting pitcher.
Yeah, I know that there's going to be some folks that think, well, yeah, hindsight's 2020. Of course you're going to say that. But let's think about this for a minute. The Reds gave him one rehab start in AAA, and then they called him up. One of the biggest reasons why is because the pitching staff was so decimated. They were looking at like bullpen days for 3 out of 5 days. So I get that side of things. But the reason that major league teams don't do this is because of the risk of re-injury. If it made sense to bring up a guy who was recovering from a long-term injury and just have him do his rehab in the major leagues, then I think everybody else would be doing it. And the Reds did something that I don't hear about a lot of other teams doing, in that they're like, okay, he's not stretched out. He's not ready to really pitch 5 innings, but he can give us 2 innings. He can give us 3 innings. He can give us 4 innings, something like that. And there were a couple of starts that were like that. But consider for a moment the reason that guys, pitchers specifically, do their rehab in the minor leagues. The innings and the pressure on their every pitch is so much less than at the major league level. Because at the major league level, wins and losses matter for the team, but the performance for the individual player is just as important because it's going to go on his resume. It's going to go against him in arbitration. It's going to go against him in contract negotiations in the future. So yes, he really helped out a team, but are the Reds going to bring that to the table in arbitration where they're just like, boy, you helped us out in a tight spot? No, they're going to be like, you threw 2 innings here, you threw 3 innings here, and then you got hurt again. What's up with that? It's going to be, well, dude, you guys brought me up too quickly. Like if his agent was Scott Boras, this would be on the front page of every news thing because Scott Boras would make sure that it is because Scott Boras, I don't think he would have let that happen, but if it had happened to a Boras client, oh my, you better believe everybody be hearing about it.
Yeah, you hit on the key thing with the effort in which pitchers pitch at the major league level. Maximum effort. We hear about that all the time, trying to achieve maximum spin rates, trying to get the ball to do all kinds of crazy things. The minor league innings are not about pitching that way. The minor league innings are about building up arm strength, stretching them out, being able to throw 70, 80 pitches that you mix up. He didn't get that. Did it contribute to the injury? Probably. It's not, Brandon can't go out and deliver something in arbitration that proves that's what caused it. Just like the Reds can't deliver something that says for certain that it didn't cause it. But I hope they've learned a lesson because Brandon Williamson, I think, was going to be a big part of what went on with this team next year. And that is blown in.
We had him penciled into the rotation.
We did, yeah. For lack of a better way to describe it, garbage time baseball.
Yep.
We sacrificed Brandon Williamson to cover some innings in garbage time baseball. And it just makes me sick. I feel terrible for him because he worked really hard to get back. And all he's ever done is what this team's asked him to do. Come up when you're not ready as a rookie and help us eat innings and learn on the job. Check. He did that. Get better each and every time out. Check. He did that. Become a decent, serviceable starting pitcher, even though David Bell won't let you pitch a third time through the lineup. Check. He did that. They asked him to come up and help the team. He did that. He got hurt. It's terrible. I think it's a tremendous loss for this team for multiple seasons now.
And that kind of brings up a very tough question because I thought coming into this offseason, the Reds were going to need to sign a starting pitcher and not of like they don't need to go out and get an ace or a 2 or a 3, maybe a 3, 4, 5 type of guy, middle to bottom of the rotation starting pitcher, but somebody that helps stabilize this group a little bit. Now, I almost think you cannot leave the offseason without doing that. Like, I thought that they could at least explain it away a little bit and say, well, we got Williamson, we got all these guys, we feel like we're good with them, we didn't need to go sign a guy. Now you do. Because as much as I am intrigued to see what Julian Aguilar gives us the rest of this way, I don't know that you can consider him a part of the opening day rotation battle. To make the opening day rotation. I think he's good depth, and I think he might be a good bullpen piece in the future for the Reds, but some of the statistics are proving that he's not exactly the best every fifth day guy. So there really feels like a lack of depth within this team that they need to go supplement through free agency because I don't readily see someone that just takes over that fifth rotation spot, and I'm like, yeah, no questions.
No, there's nobody that can be a fifth starter right now that you don't have to include the word hope when you talk about it.
Yeah.
I hope that Junis could be a fifth starter. I hope that Chase Burns is ready to go. I hope that Chase Petty continues to develop. I hope that Aguilar can become a fifth starter that you can rely on. I hope that Graham Ashcraft figures out his stuff. There is no certainty there. And I feel like, though, you're correct, and they're going to look at all those names, and they're going to present that list, and they're going to say, but we have all these guys, so we're going to allocate those resources, those dollars, someplace else. And I don't know. I mean, even at that, we're talking about, well, that means the other 4 rotation spots are set. We don't know what Nick Lodolo is going to do. We don't know how he's going to bounce back.
And it was announced the other day that he's not coming back, which I think we knew this, but the Reds admitted it to themselves that they knew he wasn't coming back. But
we knew that already.
What's he?
We know Hunter Green's the number 1 starter ace of this team. We know that they want Nick Lodolo to be the number 2 guy in this rotation. Who knows if he's going to be able to pull that off or not? We know then that you get Andrew Abbott after that, and then you get Rhett Lauder. Those are 1, 2, 3, 4. And of those 4, there's still a lot of question marks. So I think you're right. I think Brandon Williamson at least causes you to sit down at a table in the offseason with your team, with your scouts, with your staff, with the guys evaluating the free agent market, and asking the question, is there somebody that we can get for X amount of dollars available that's better than this list of hope and dreams that we've got going on over here? And I don't know how the answer to that question is not yes. There's going to be somebody out there you can go get.
I feel like, and we're going to have a bunch of episodes that break down, what the Reds could do and what the financials look like and stuff. And I still keep coming back to this spitball number of around 50, 60 million is what they have committed for next year. Mm-hmm. So it feels like they should have some flexibility to work within that. What would a Santander cost? What would a guy like that in the outfield cost? And then how much would you have left over after that? Because you still have a couple of other areas you do need to address. But hypothetically, for 2 seconds, consider the fact that maybe Frankie Montas is out there and available for another 1 year, $16 million deal. Do you do that?
Though, that's a signing of another guy that you have to put hope in the sentence. I hope Frankie Montas comes back and pitches well and his shoulder holds up in year 2. I don't want, if you're going to go sign a guy, it has to be somebody that you don't have to put the word hope in that sentence. It has to be somebody that's reliable, that you can count on to come and do a job. That's the only way they should be spending money on a starting pitcher.
I 100% agree. But one thing is for sure, that news really dampened the day for all of us in Reds country on Wednesday. But there was some good news because Spencer Steer, and he did this on Tuesday, he didn't do this on Wednesday, but Spencer Steer got into the 2020 club. What's that mean for him, Elly, Barry Larkin, and Eric Davis? We'll tell you coming up next. There's just a few days to take advantage of this awesome offer over at FanDuel, because all you have to do is wager $5. You don't even have to be a new customer. You can be like a returning gambler over at FanDuel, and you wager $5 and you get 3 free weeks of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, as long as you got a Google account and a form of payment, you can watch every out-of-market Sunday afternoon football game through NFL Sunday Ticket. Plus, you can take that $5 and put it on the Elly parlay. Elly's got the goods when it comes to 2+ total bases, 1+ steal, and 1+ run score. Usually pays out about 4-1, and he's hit enough times. Got to go back through and look for the rest of the season, but I'm pretty sure that you're in the positive if you've been taking it all year long. Check it out today at FanDuel. Again, $5 wager gets you a free NFL Sunday Ticket for 3 weeks. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and get started today. Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast here on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. Take us with you on the audio side of things whenever you can't watch us on YouTube. We are on literally every podcasting app. All right, Steve, let's close this out because Elly De La Cruz and Spencer Steer become the first Cincinnati Reds teammates to go 2020 since Barry Larkin and Eric Davis did it. Was it back in 96, 86, 96? I forget.
I think 80s. I don't think 90s.
Yeah.
I don't have it in front of me.
But the first time since that happened, I gotta feel, I mean, that is a good thing, number one. But number two, it just shows the talent that these two guys can have. And I've said that coming into this season, I wanted them to be the 1-2 punch in the lineup. And oddly enough, on opening day, I think Steer was 6th and Elly was 7th in the lineup. That's not what I meant. But I feel like they are the guys going forward that are the 1-2 punch. As much as I might have thought that this year as a whole has been a bit down for Spencer Steer, he still has shown even in a down year, he can be effective.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is another player that probably would have had a bit of a better year if the Reds had been healthy and the energy had been right and they were kind of feeding off of each other. But I mean, what Spencer Steer has done is perfectly acceptable. You know, his batting average is not where we wanted it to be. His batting average is at 232, but his on base percentage is 327 and his slugging percentage is 419. Now, would you like higher numbers? Yeah, you'd like higher numbers all the way around, but 20 home runs, 91 RBIs. He still has an outside shot of getting 100 RBIs on the season. So, you know, there's still some hope. 25 stolen bases, 20 home runs. Spencer Steer is going to be around here a long time, being that, you know, I was telling our good buddy Paul Keels your favorite line about Spencer Steer, which is he's the mashed potatoes. And Paul thought that was a great analogy. And, you know, I think it holds true. I think that Spencer Steer is going to be that guy that's around here for a while and just you can kind of rely on him to be there on the plate and be good and just, you know, keep him around. And I'm fine with that because Elly brings enough flash for everybody. You don't have to have the flash. You just need the statistics. And Elly is embracing being the face. Elly is embracing being the electricity. You know, Elly's going to be the guy that sparks everybody else. Spencer Steer doesn't need to be that guy. Spencer Steer is going to be the blue collar working dude that Cincinnati loves to embrace, that just shows up and does his job and continues to put up numbers.
Yeah. And it's great now that you can kind of put these two guys in the same conversation as Barry Larkin and Eric Davis. And yes, I know those two guys had phenomenal careers. One a Hall of Famer, one had injuries not derailed his career. He would have been a Hall of Famer, maybe even more so than Barry Larkin, but that's a conversation for a different time. But the fact that those guys were really the backbone of some awesome Reds teams, I got a good feeling about a guy like Spencer Steer and a guy like Elly De La Cruz being in this lineup for the next couple of years together. I feel like the Reds really have, as much as we have found out that the core is not as big or as deep as we thought it was, we still have the absolute center of the core in these two guys. And I really think for me, this brings up a question because, you know, there's been a lot of amazing performances, whether it be home runs from Aaron Judge, whether it be a 40-40 season from Shohei Ohtani, whether it be Bobby Witt becoming the first ever shortstop to go multiple 30-30 seasons. Could the Reds have two 30-30 seasons in Spencer Steer and Elly De La Cruz in the near future?
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. Elly De La Cruz, while still figuring it out, has put up 24 home runs this year. Could add to that total over the next week or so before the games run out on him. Spencer Steer had a couple really bad slump spots throughout this season for teams that were struggling to find people to replace, were struggling to find people to play certain positions. You know, Spencer Steer, I think, never was able to settle in and still got to 20. This team, all things being equal, is the ceiling there? Is the potential there for both of those guys to hit 30 home runs? Yeah. The potential, the ceiling is there for both of those guys to be 30-30 guys. No question.
And that's something that I really want to dive into about Spencer Steer's year. You know, we're going to come upon some different series this offseason. We're going to really look back and in depth on a lot of different guys on this roster and what their performances look like, because you're right. I mean, there were some times where Spencer Steer was really, really good. I mean, he started off the year really freaking hot. Like, we remember the grand slam that he had in Philadelphia, and it felt like he was just picking up where he left off from last year. But then he went through some dry spells. Like, May was a big time dry spell for him at the same time that it was a big time dry spell for the entire team. And then you also got the middle of the summer where he kind of disappeared a little bit. And I think that was the reason more so than anything that Tyler Stevenson took over the number 3 spot in the lineup from Spencer Steer. But at the end of the day, he is going to have some nice counting numbers like this 2020, like his RBI total and things like that, that he's going to be able to look back on this season and say, even though it didn't live up to what I thought it was going to be, and I mentioned this on the podcast the other day, like, he hit 40 points higher last year than he did batting average wise. He got on base 30 points higher than he did this year. He had a slugging percentage that I think was 50 points higher last year. And even the projection models had him doing better this year. So on the slash line part of stuff, you still see the improvement that is needed, but you can lean back and say there was still a lot to like about Spencer Steer's 2024.
Because the team has played the way it has, we haven't been in the position to have very many hot takes, Jeff, but I'm going to get a little hot takey right now as we wrap up segment 3 here, because the Reds are going to have 3 2020 guys in 2025. Spencer Steer and Elly De La Cruz will both be at minimum 2020 guys. You know who else is going to be a 2020 guy? Jake the Rake Fraley. He has a career high in home runs last year of 15. His season was completely derailed this year by illness and family injury and illness and all of the things that he needed to be worrying about that weren't baseball, justifiably. He's going to come into next season with a regular, good to go spring training, good to go, healthy. He stole 20 bases this year, given everything that was going on. He hit 15 home runs last year. His power is going to return. He's going to be a 2020 guy.
I like that. I will take that all day, especially considering the fact he's going to go into opening day and right field is going to be his. Like, I don't see anybody else taking him unless the Reds go out and they sign a right fielder, which then Jake Fraley kind of fits in some other different areas. But yeah, I like that take. I like that take.
And that's where we're going to end, with Jeff liking one of my takes. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Reds. Thanks so much for making us your first listen today and every day. Make sure you've clicked that subscribe button. Make sure you've clicked that notification bell. Make sure you have us on the audio feeds, because we want to talk baseball with you every single day. Now that you've made us your first listen, go make the Locked On MLB podcast your second listen. You can prepare for the Fall Classic with Sully over there, who has you covered each and every day. You can find a link to Locked On MLB in the description of today's show, so you don't even need to search for it. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And with that being said, Jeffrey, what can people count on from me and you the rest of the way and as we approach offseason mode?
They can expect us to keep our eye on the important stuff, these final 9 games of this season where the Reds are mathematically eliminated. They can expect us to be getting ready for the offseason and the moves that the Reds need to make to become a playoff team next season. And they can be ready for us to be Locked On Reds every single day.
Jake the Rake 2020 Fraley. I love it.
Rake!